Hey everybody, Ben Dorr here. I'm the executive director for Minnesota Right to Life. And the August 9th Republican primary is coming up very, very fast. And in your Senate District 10, this is the new Senate District 10 after redistricting. It kind of encompasses like Aitkin, Benton, Crow Wing, Santee, Mille Lacs, Morrison counties. If you know where that is, if you live there, this is a video for you. Especially if you support the right to life, if you support the unborn, if you were thrilled to see Roe versus Wade be overthrown at long last. This is a video for you because, again, there's a three-way Republican primary in Senate District 10, and you need to know where these candidates stand on the issue of life. So with no more ado, I'm going to jump right into this. The first candidate we want to talk about is Nathan Wesenberg. We sent him a Minnesota Right to Life candidate survey, and we asked him a series of questions. The first question was whether or not he would support life at conception legislation. He answered 100% yes, he would support that. Not only that, but he would be a lead sponsor on life at conception to end abortion in Minnesota. After the downfall of Roe versus Wade, life at conception is how we end abortion in Minnesota. So for him to be vocally in support of this is a huge deal. It's very exciting. And he said he'd be a chief sponsor of the bill. Very, very cool. To this day, nobody, all of these so-called pro-life senators that we've had throughout all these years, nobody has ever introduced a life at conception bill. Nathan Wesenberg is promising to do that. The next question we asked him was, will you support defunding Planned Parenthood, the biggest butchers of babies in the entire country, and certainly in Minnesota as well? Nathan Wesenberg said, absolutely yes. That would be an easy yes. They don't need our tax dollars. In fact, we give them our tax dollars via the legislature, and then they turn around and funnel millions and millions of dollars into the back pockets of Democrats and leftists who are pushing a pro-abortion agenda to get them into office and continue doing what they do. So we don't need to be giving them a single penny of our tax dollars. And he said that he would vote to defund them entirely. All in all, he answered his Minnesota Right to Life candidate questionnaire 100% pro-life. He couldn't have answered it any better than he did. So if you see Nathan Wesenberg out on the campaign trail, give him a big thank you for being very open, very vocal, very honest on his opinions, his beliefs, and telling the voters what he would do if he made it to St. Paul. Big thank you. The next candidate we want to talk about is Steve Wenzel. Also filled out his Minnesota Right to Life candidate questionnaire, 100% pro-life. A couple of things of note. He was a former state representative. Steve was. He was in the Minnesota House for 28 years, with his last year being the legislative session in 2001. So Steve Wenzel, his first year in office was 1973, which is kind of ironic because that's the 1972 election cycle was the very first election that Joe Biden won his first election as well. So he's quite the character. And again, he was in there for 28 years, from 1972 to 2001. He was a Democrat. My understanding is he was a Democrat for the entirety of his time in office. He recently became a Republican. And now that he's a Republican, he's kind of well known, if he's known, for being a big supporter of, frankly, many of the biggest rhinos, the Republican in name only. A simple Google search shows all of these pictures of him with Paul Ryan, total baby killing rhino. There's him with George W. Bush, Jeb Bush, and many others who were no friend to the babies and funded abortion the entire time they were in office. So Steve Wenzel, he was a Democrat. Now he's a Republican. But he seems to be a big supporter of all the never Trumper, anti-Trump Republicans. So just something to note. But again, if you see Steve Wenzel, thank you for filling out his Minnesota Right to Life candidate survey. The next candidate we want to talk about is Jim Newberger. Now, like Steve Wenzel, Jim Newberger was once a state representative as well. I think he lost an election for Senate a while back. He now is trying to run again. He really wants to be in the Senate after he was in the House. But I don't have very good news about Jim Newberger. The first thing I can tell you is that he did refuse to fill out his Minnesota Right to Life candidate questionnaire. So again, Nathan Wesenberg filled out his, Steve filled out his, but Jim Newberger has refused to fill out the Minnesota Right to Life candidate survey and is the only candidate in the primary who has done so, who has refused to. But I can tell you about his history in the House, though. And this is important. Again, if he didn't fill out a survey, we wouldn't have much information, except for we do have a vote that he took in 2017. On May 25, 2017, Jim Newberger voted for Senate File 2. Senate File 2 was the Health and Human Services Omnibus Bill that was passed in 2017. It funded the 2017 and 2018 years. And that bill did fund abortion. It funded the death of over 20,000 babies. 10,000 babies per year get killed in Minnesota via abortion. And this bill helped fund the death of 10,000 babies in 2017, 10,000 babies in 2018. Jim Newberger was a yes vote on this bill. You can see it on your screen right now. Here was the bill, Senate File 2. You can see the arrow pointing at his name. Newberger was a yes vote on this bill. And the way it works, and I just want to be very quick about it, this HHS bill, it's a huge bloated bill. It's an omnibus bill, which means they take all of the so-called health and human services items and they throw them all together into one giant bill. And this bill funded Minnesota Care, and it funded Medicaid, or what's called the Medical Assistance Program. Now, for the Minnesota Care money, and Jim's talking about this, that the Minnesota Care, in the bill, there was a prohibition on the Minnesota Care money going to perform abortions, except for in the case of rape, incest, and life of the mother. Now, as a Christian organization, we don't support abortions at all. We think God has a plan for every life, every unborn baby, and we don't agree with killing babies just because of the method of their conception. So the bill funded Minnesota Care, which supposedly prohibited abortion. But the other thing that Senate File 2 did was fund our medical assistance program in Minnesota. And Planned Parenthood is using medical assistance money to give people abortions for free on the back of Minnesota taxpayers. And Jim Newberger could have stopped this. The legislature could have stopped this funding if they had simply put a strict prohibitor in the bill saying that no medical assistance money will go to perform abortions. But they didn't do that. What's more, it was the Republicans who had a huge majority in the Minnesota House in 2017. So this wasn't the Democrat bill. The Democrats didn't create this bill. The Democrats didn't have the votes to pass this bill or stop this bill. This was a Republican bill that funded abortion and the death of 20,000 babies over the 2-year period. And Jim Newberger was a yes vote. And now he's trying to tell the voters in Senate District 10 that that's just not true. And he keeps pointing to the Minnesota Care section in the bill saying, see, it says that it prohibits abortion right here. All while totally ignoring the medical assistance money. That is the bigger portion of the bill. It gets more taxpayer funding than the Minnesota Care does. Medical assistance money is being used to perform abortions, and Jim Newberger voted for it. And now he wants voters to pretend that didn't happen. So if you see Jim Newberger out on the campaign trail, tell him to apologize. Tell him to repent. It was a wicked vote. and it killed a lot of babies. It shouldn't have happened. We should not be funding this in Minnesota. Republicans or Democrats, we don't care. If you're pushing for abortions, if you're funding abortions with our tax dollars, Minnesota Right to Life is here to call you out for it and to expose that fact. I'm a father of 4 myself. I have 4 little boys. And I can't sit here and pretend that these votes aren't happening. I can't sit here and pretend that we're not funding abortion and that our tax dollars are being used to do this. And Jim Newberger should have voted no, but he voted yes. So tell Jim Newberger to apologize. Thank Nathan Wesenberg for promising to be the biggest proponent of life at conception and defunding Planned Parenthood and getting rid of taxpayer funding for abortions. It shouldn't be happening here. Tim Walz wants more money to go to fund abortion during the 2023 legislative session, which is the new budget year. He wants more funding for abortions because he's encouraging women to come from out of state and girls and kill their babies in Minnesota, and he wants to use our tax dollars to do it. Jim Newberger already voted for this. And when you're done, guys, I appreciate you sticking with this video for as long as you have. Please share this with everybody you know in Senate District 10. And tell them when they go out to vote on August 9, when they go out to vote in this primary, vote pro-life. Let's turn this state back around, make it a safe sanctuary for babies, make it into a state that respects life, respects the unborn. And let's make Minnesota pro-life again. All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it.